Everybody, and welcome back to class. Today's Saturday, October the 3rd. It's a cold and blustery day. I know fall is finally upon us, and we are ready to jump into session 7 of English 111. The good news in this session, I don't believe there is anything that you have to read in the textbook. So let's go into the class session and see what we have to do for today. Of course, we're going to be finalizing Writing Project 2. We're also going to take a peek at Writing Project 3. And by looking at Writing Project 3, we're also going to get a glimpse into what will be Writing Project 4, because Writing Project 3 and 4 are somewhat the same, two different sides of the same coin. But I'll get to more of that in just a little bit. For Session 7, of course, we are finishing Writing Project 2, finalizing our peer response feedback, taking a look at Project 3, and there are two supplemental resources, one on selecting a topic, and this is referring to Writing Project 3, which by virtue of the instructions will also give you a topic for Writing Project 4, and a library tutorial on finding images. This is for our next discussion board. And that is discussion board 7, which will finish up in session 8, Every Picture Tells a Story, where you will be selecting images that will refer to Writing Project 3. And of course, you're turning in your final draft, final version of Writing Project 2. So let's take a look at the learning activities. And jump into Writing Project 2. These are the instructional steps. And by the way, in just a few minutes, I've got some good examples that I'm going to show you on the annotated bibliography, which you will need for Writing Project 4, and also an example of Every Picture Tells a Story, the next discussion board. But we'll get to those in just a minute. So for Writing Project 2, you've already followed steps 1 through 6 if you turned in your draft. And we're going to finish it off by following steps 7 through 10. Step 7, conducting peer response in class session 6. Many of you have already finished this. That's great. And the whole purpose of peer response is to enable you to strengthen your draft. And if you turned it in, you also got feedback from me. I enjoy reading those. And as I've mentioned before, I can be a little critical on your first draft, but that's not because I am a critical person. It's because I want to point out as many things as possible that I think need work. So when you turn in that final version, that you do as well as you can be. As I'm sure you've noticed, if you turn in the draft, you get all the points, and you also get comments from me. When you turn in the final version, because the first draft is only worth 15 points, the second version is worth a lot more, and I tend to say a lot less. That's because I want you to focus on that final version as much as possible. Notice in the instructions under number 8, it says along with your final draft, submit a cover letter explaining the feedback that you received. I've done this in other class sessions and I'm going to do it again. You don't need a cover letter, so you can skip this step. Don't turn it in. Of course, you will include your situational analysis, and that should be on a separate page. And I mentioned this in some of the feedback that I've given. You do not need to include the MLA header, which has your name, my name, the class name, and the date on the situational analysis, but it should be on a separate page. Make sure you include the MLA header on the essay itself, and you must always include at the end a works cited page. A few of you were missing that on the rough drafts. I pointed that out to you. But make sure when you turn in the second version, the final version, that the works cited page is absolutely on there. And if I see you included a cover letter, I know you didn't watch this video. That does happen. Step 9, strengthen your voice. Think about your language choices, develop your own voice tone and writing style, and of course, proofread the heck out of it. And make sure you use F7, spelling grammar check. As I've mentioned before, the first thing I do when I open up a final version is I hit F7. Well, you might as well beat me to the punch and just use it yourself. And again, you can dismiss the cover letter. And like we did in the first writing project, you will be submitting it into 2 places. And I'll show you again where those are. Let's go back to the class session. Writing Project 3, Project Description. We'll take a look at that in just a minute, but I want to get back to learning activities. Let's take a look at the Writing Project 3 description. I will discuss this some more when we get to class session 8, but I want to go ahead and point out a few things right now. If you're like me, and some of you are, although not all, I find it helpful if I tend to mull topics over in my mind before I ever start to put anything on paper. Whether I'm driving, washing the dishes, who knows, I just like to kick things around. Helps me focus. So this is Writing Project 3. Again, you're not starting on this just yet, but it isn't too early to start thinking about it. And for Writing Project 3, you will inform a specific audience about a specific problem or issue that you care about and that the audience needs to know or understand. Here's the important part for Writing Project 3 and what I want you to start focusing on now. This is an informative essay, which means you're going to state the facts as you find them from outside sources, but you will not weigh in with your personal views or personal opinions. This essay should never include the words, I think, I feel, I believe. You are simply stating two sides of a topic. This group over here says XYZ on the following. This group over here says ABC on the same subject. That's very important. Having done this class in the past, many times students want to give their own personal views of what someone else has written. That's understandable, that's natural, but for this writing project, we don't want that. You will get the chance to state your personal views and opinions on this topic, but that's in Writing Project 4. Writing Project 3 will be derived from the core readings. You may find it easier if you simply stick with the topic that you wrote about for Writing Project 2, or at least some aspect of it. It may not necessarily be the same core reading, but it can be the same topic, or even the same author writing a different article about something else that interests you. And notice for the situational analysis, the audience for paper number 3 is not going to be me and the other members of the class. That's what we've included in the situational analysis in Project 1 and Project 2, but we're not going to do it this time. For this time, in the situational analysis, you're going to describe the audience, who you are trying to inform with this writing. And those people include who needs to know about this issue, why this audience needs to know this information. So consider that. Again, as I've always said, print this off, refer back to it. As you're mulling things over in your head, reread this document a couple of times. It will help you start to form ideas of what you're going to write about. Notice that your draft for Writing Project 3 will be 1,000 words. These get a little bit longer each project that we take on. And the rest of this says, begin to develop a first draft. We're not yet to that point. That's for class session 8, but I wanted to at least introduce that to you so you can start thinking of ideas. But for this week, obviously, I want most of your time and energy spent on making Writing Project 2 as good as possible. If you're having trouble coming up with an idea for Writing Project 3, here's a library tutorial on selecting a topic. And this one is also important, even though it's supplemental and you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Here's a library tutorial on finding images. You will need these for the discussion board that starts in this session, session 7. And that is 3 images, every picture tells a story. And I'll show you an example of what that should look like. Let's look at the assignments and assessments for session 7. Session 7 and Session 8 discussion. We will begin this in Session 7 this week, and we will finalize it the next week when we get peer feedback. Every picture tells a story. Your initial post, this is a brainstorming activity, as it says, using images to help you think about the different aspects of a problem or issue. This must be related in some way to something in the core readings. And as it says, in 2 to 3 sentences, briefly describe a problem or issue you could use for writing Project 3. Next, find 3 images that illustrate different aspects of the problem or issue. You can copy and paste these images into your discussion board. You could even use YouTube clips if you'd like, provided they're brief. No one wants to sit through 10 minutes of a video, but if you find one that's much shorter than that, you can go ahead and use it. And then provide a brief discussion of each image or video describing why you selected it and why it speaks to the problem or controversy you want to address. Your initial post should be at least 200 words. So what should one of these look like? Well, let's take a look. This is the same discussion board that one of my students in an earlier semester turned in. It was over the summer semester. And notice that this student did use the MLA header. You don't have to, but they did. And this student wrote for Writing Project 3, I'm going to inform parents about hearing loss in children and the way it affects their education. This is her summary of what the problem is. And notice she includes a picture of a newborn, a nice chart. This is not a picture per se, but it is a very good illustration. And here's another photo of a child obviously wearing a hearing aid in a classroom. I'm going to post this into the class so you can read it later. Don't worry that I'm going through it so quickly now. I'm not saying this is a perfect example, but this one's pretty well done. So I will put this up in the class so you can refer to it and read through this entire thing before you write your own post. It'll give you a great guide to go by. So you're going to post that into discussion board 7. Right here. And as we've done other times in discussion boards, click this link, create thread, give it a title, and then include your document as an attachment. Don't copy and paste into the discussion board. Include your Word document as an attachment. I think, yes, we've polished off the learning activities. We're going into assignments and assessments. I believe that's where we left off. Yes, it is. So again, in session 7, you're only posting your original document. Every picture tells a story with 3 images and an explanation of what your subject is and why you chose those images. In session 8, next week, we'll have peer review of everyone's images. And that brings us to Writing Project 2, Analysis. This is your final version of Writing Project 2. Of course, you're going to turn it in here to me, and then you're also going to turn it in to turnitin.com for originality checking. I know from Writing Project 1 and Writing Project 2, some of you have had problems with this. There appears to be a pop-up blocker that prevents you from submitting it here to turnitin.com. If you continue to have problems with this, there are instructions on how to bypass the pop-up blocker. An easier choice may also simply be to turn it in on a different PC or a different laptop. The ones on campus, if you're close to a campus, I know everyone here is an online student, but if you can make it to an Ivy Tech campus and use the computers in the library, you won't encounter this problem. If you're not near an Ivy Tech campus, borrow someone else's, try it that way. But if you continue to experience problems with this, by all means, let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to help you out. For a couple of students in Writing Project 2, they couldn't get it submitted this way. They told me about it, and I was able to submit it for them. I don't mind doing that, but let's try and make it work the way it's supposed to, because we're paying for this software. It's not asking it too much to do its job. So again, you're going to turn it in right here one time. That comes to me for grading, and this one goes to the originality checking. And if you're wondering, I look at this one first. So far, I've not seen any very high percentages from anyone in this class, and I don't anticipate that, but that is my process. I look there first, then I review and grade. That might be everything for this session. I want to go back and be sure. And before I post this video, I will also include the example of Every Picture Tells a Story. Haven't decided entirely at the time of this recording where I'm going to put it, but I'll let you know in the announcements. That does appear to be it. As always, reach out to me, please. Text number 812-498-4200. That is my preferred method of communication. You can also email me at mstenger and the number 1 at ivytech.edu. And of course, you can call me anytime at 800-416-1747. I don't mind taking phone calls, provided they're not 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll answer your call. That's it for this week. Have a great week, everybody.